Peace and welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. Folks, I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Today, we got a fantastic show for you. I'm very, very excited. First, I'm asking the question, do you want to know? A judge has allowed for versions of the search warrants for Mar-a-Lago to be released and detailing all that has been confiscated from the former president and his residence. I'll break that down, but I'm asking the question, is this something that the American people should know? I want you to join me for that conversation. Then we're going to be checking in and talking about back to school. So many different things that we're facing for this upcoming school year, from everything from learning gaps to dealing with parent inaction. We'll be checking in with Dr. Lopez to give us some insight about how we can make this year back to school productive and progressive for everybody involved. And then I'm going to be checking in with author and entrepreneur, a sister named Tiffany Green Abdullah, and she talks about her book, The Bean Pie. But it's all about family. It's all about breaking generational trauma and about building generational wealth legacy. We'll have that conversation. And then later on, we check in with our love and relationships expert, LaDon Black, to talk about a new study that shows that single men are the most loneliest people right now in this modern moment. Can you believe that? Men are. I'm going to break down that data. And ladies, don't be mad at me, but you got to hear what this data has to say. So we got all of that and a whole lot more. So stay with us. That's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the show. Welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. All right, we got so many great conversations lined up for you, and we certainly encourage you to join us for those discussions. Make sure y'all jump in and be a part of our online culture crew on YouTube and Facebook, where you can pose your questions and share your thoughts about the conversations, the discussion topics. And I would love to hear it. Of course, we do something like no one else. We make sure that we bring your voices to the forefront. So we will post your comments, share your thoughts. And big shout out to my online culture crew, always tuning in, checking in from wherever they are. Some of you are at work, some of you on the way home, some of you are just moving in and around your respective places and business and around the cities. So big shout out to all of you for continuing to tune in to the culture here on the Black Star Network. So let's jump right in. This first conversation is about what we're seeing coming out of Florida, where the Justice Department was ordered to release on today by a redacted version of the affidavit justifying the search of former President Trump's Florida residence, his Mar-a-Lago residence. Here's what USA Today put out. Unsecured storage, confidential documents, what Trump search affidavit reveals. So there has been a number, of course, we've been talking about it on this show and many other places. The former president had this whole classified document situation, a procedural thing, a minor procedural thing, right? Just simply returning those documents into the hands of the National Archives. Something very simple is turning up into be this major, major controversy. And so as a result of that, of course, there was motions filed. Former President Trump is suing the FBI. The Justice Department is brought in. National Archives said, we just simply want the documents back, man. That's all we want. We just want the documents back. And so many other things. They found out, check this out, according to the latest reports, here's what was revealed in that search warrant what they were looking for, what they had confiscated, based on what President Trump took. Here's the Justice Department. They shared that here's, and I want to, Keenan, if you could put this on there, thank you, bro. They released this redacted version, but here's what it breaks down to. One, highly classified materials at Mar-a-Lago. Highly classified national defense information was included in 15 boxes of documents initially recovered from former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in January. Two, the documents included top secret classification. The affidavit for the search warrant lists 184 unique documents bearing classification markings, including 67 documents marked as confidential, 92 documents marked as secret, and 25 documents marked as top secret. Number three, not secure. The storage room at Mar-a-Lago's Trump's residential suite, Pine Hall, and his office called the 45 office were not currently authorized locations for the storage of classified information or national defense information. Documents were stored in multiple locations on the premises. The fourth thing about this, the DOJ, Department of Justice, asked Trump team to better secure storage rooms. The Justice Department lawyers warned Trump's legal team on June the 8th that the storage room at Mar-a-Lago holding sensitive material was not secured and should be better secured. The other part is, why did a judge okay the redacted affidavits release? According to U.S. Magistrate Bruce Reinhardt, he ordered the release Thursday and said that the department could narrowly tailor the redactions while protecting the integrity of the investigation. This is what, in number six, what has the Justice Department said? The department lawyers have said they oppose the release of the affidavit because of the risk it could reveal the strategy of the investigation or discourage witnesses from cooperating. But Judge Reinhardt found the redactions would prevent those results. So it's a little bit about not making sure that the current investigation that the Department of Justice has into former President Trump is not going to be compromised as a result of this. And the other part of it is that Judge Reinhardt said that the American people should know exactly what the search was all about. Because by this being an unprecedented search of a former president having his residence searched in this fashion. And then let me just put this out there, folks, and y'all share your thoughts on this. So I want to know, do you want to know this? But this just didn't happen overnight. There were numerous attempts by the Department of Justice, by the National Archives, for former President Trump to pass over all the documents, numerous attempts over the year, numerous. So this wasn't, and of course, Trump is playing the victim because that's one of his strategies, that the people want to keep him, hold him, and victimize him, which is BS. But there were numerous attempts. They tried, they talked to his lawyers. The lawyers only gave them the partial documents and not being forthright about, all the documents that was needed and all of the, and sharing all the information that was necessary. So this situation is, as we've been talking about it, it looks like it just continues to be added, compounded. But here's what those are the latest details and the big development on this. I'm asking a question from you. Do you think the American people should know? Would you have wanted to know what was in those documents? I want you to share your thoughts, post your comments on our YouTube page, on our Facebook page, and let's have a conversation about this real quickly. But do you want to know? And I think personally, let me just say this, folks, the American people should know. Just one, for the integrity, for the sake of, we don't want to go down that slippery slope where major action against a former president is taken like this, and then we don't know. I'd rather be an informed citizen. I want to know. The second thing is we should know, because this will keep the agency, the Department of Justice, in a better space. Like, if we really want to see a turnaround in this country from agencies, from government officials, then that has to be transparency, communicating with the American people. This has to be at the top of the priority list, because the American people, and y'all can disagree with me on this or not, but we often just don't know about what our government is doing and why our government is doing this stuff. We just don't know. And as a result of us not knowing, we get into a space of speculation. And then as a result of speculation, then, we just think of all types of wild stuff. We just think of all types of wild stuff, right? So we just, oh, well, they trying to do this. Oh, it's about that. Or, Trump was doing it. Next thing you know, Trump, he really an agent for Russia, blah, blah, blah. He might. No, we want to know what's going on because it's unprecedented, because it's very, very serious, and because it relieves everybody of the burden of trying to figure stuff out when the government is not doing its job. So we should know. But I want to hear your thoughts on this. Make sure y'all post your comments on YouTube and Facebook. And I like the fact, here's the other part about this, folks. Here's the other part. The other part is they're having an investigation of this president. Now, we haven't talked about every single thing that's been happening with President Trump on this show. But folks, stuff is falling apart for this man. I was reading an article a little bit, and I believe it's in the New York Times, where he was saying that on the outside, Trump is posturing and positioning himself as being the victim. Like he's raising money he has been able to raise money off of his being able to spin the story about this classified documents drama. But behind the scenes, the power brokers in the Republican Party and just the power brokers who are supporting his efforts, they're very concerned about his legal issues, because it's one thing after another. This man has so many investigations into himself, his business practices, his governance. I mean, the people around him are being investigated, from Rudy Giuliani to everybody else that he knows in his circle, his inner circle, his outer circle. I mean, the man is just plagued with investigations. Now, again, I'm gonna just go back to this point that as much as some may take joy in that, right? And we talked about this, I think it was yesterday or the day before, we talked about how one man, take a look at this one, just walk with me on this, folks. One man has created an uproar and has forced this country to face its own frailty of the larger experiment of democracy, of the larger experiment of government and how we govern. One man. Now, we've seen this time and time again, and here's why I put it in that context, because we've seen, political leaders getting into trouble and hot water before. That's nothing new. But what we're seeing is that this is coming from a man who held the highest position in the land. And as a result of that, as a result of how he handled himself while he was in the White House and how he used government agencies for his personal and political benefit and gain. Here's a man who has forced us all to look at whether the system of capitalism is a system that we should continue to sustain, whether the system of democracy as we see it. He has forced us to look at the two-party system. One man. And here's the thing, it's not, and I, even for myself, I say, well, what is it that about Trump? Is it about him personally, or is it about the ideas that he represents, the ideas that he exemplifies? And it's more really about the idea. It's about the ideas more than anything, because even when he's long and gone, right? When he moves, when he's dead, if the ideas that he built, that he used to put himself in positions of power and influence still exist, then he's not dead. Time has shown us that it doesn't matter whether the person is living or dead, if their ideology is still followed. Time has shown us that if if their example of leadership is still studied and followed, that they're still alive. We still talk about the greats. Whether you're talking about white people, black people, whether you're talking about the heroes and sheroes of the struggle, whether you're talking about the founders of this country, the ideas are still in place. So Trump represents an idea. It's not just about him anymore. It's about the fact that his presence, what he believes in, the ideas that he give expression to, the ugliness of capitalism, the ugliness of democracy, the ugliness of white privilege, the ugliness of white rage, the ugliness of males, of male dominance. I mean, all of these things, all of these ideas, right? He represents that. He's not the epitome, but he represents that in a very, very big way. All right, let me take a couple of your comments, and I would love to hear what you got to say. Janae, good talking to you, Janae. Good afternoon, sis. You said, finally, it only took after his presidency. He was hell on wheels before he got into office. He had better enjoyed his run. Time to go to the slammer where he can harm no more. Well, I hear you, but the idea that he represents has infected so many other people, Janae. I want to see him be held accountable. But how do you hold an idea accountable? How do you hold a belief accountable? How do you lock up a value? Just ask. Thank you, Janae, for kicking us off today. Sophia, you checked it. Farajii talks about chump. All I could think about is the Tony Braxton song, just another sad love song for those Republicans. This is a sad love song for those Republicans, and it's a sad love song for America, because now America going to have to deal with this. And I'm talking about all of us. We're going to have to look at the ugliness, Sophia. And I think you would agree with me. It's a sad situation. It's a very sad situation for all of us. And as much as some of us might be in a state of denial about whether we want to face it or not, the sad song is disrupting everybody's way of life in this country. We just can't run from it. We got to either deal with it or we're going to be consumed by it. Sophia, always a pleasure to hear from you. Thank you. PM26, you said Trump is very criminally minded. Absolutely. No doubt about that, PM26. No doubt about that. But guess what? So is America. So is America. Right? Trump is not the cause. Trump is the effect. He's the effect. He wouldn't have gotten in this way. He wouldn't have gotten all this way if people didn't enable him. People didn't support him. People didn't back him. From the time he was a young businessman in the real estate world in New York City. Hell, we can go back to the time that his father taught him how to be ruthless, relentless, scrupulous, corrupt. Come on, man. And guess what? His father was rewarded for that. And this is how deep it goes. You got to go deep, folks. When you look at the history of his dad, Donald Trump, father, daddy, whatever you want to call it, Daddy Trump, you look at that and then you see the timeline. You see a man that was groomed to be a certain way. That's what I see. That's what I see. So getting back to your point, PM26, yep, he was made that way. And it's not for us to, oh, poor Donald Trump. It's like, no. This is happening in all different places all around this country because of an idea or a set of ideas, beliefs, and values. And this is the thing we're going to have to disrupt, folks. Shalinda, you checked in. Thank you, PM26. Shalinda, you said the idea that he represents was always there. He just gave them the courage to show out in public with it. He's not a victim. Facts. Facts. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so if we understand that, right? We understand that, yeah, you could put the person away, but you got to do more in making sure that the idea doesn't take root. That's where the real work comes in. I'm not worried about just putting him away. Oh, yeah, he needs to be locked up. But that idea is still running around creating mayhem and madness. So what do we do about that? How do we uproot that? How do we stop that? How do we disrupt that from being the cancer that it is? That's the big question facing this country. That's the big question facing us as the citizens. And that's the big question facing the way we govern in this country. Folks, I got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about back to school. We're going to be checking in with one expert to give us some insight about the various challenges facing Black students and students across this country. So you don't want to miss this conversation. Stay with us. That's coming forward as we continue this conversation right here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, that we know that it is time for us to go back to school, where students across this country are getting themselves back into better sleep habits, are making sure that their study skills are sharp, and most importantly, to make sure that this educational year, we really gain some real benefit. And a lot of schools across the country are still rebounding from the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact that the pandemic has had on everything from school schedules to learning styles. And so as a result of it, there is greater emphasis about what the future of education in America is going to look like, is particularly this year, where most people feel a little bit safer about dealing with these public health crises like COVID and now the cases of polio and monkeypox. But folks are feeling like, you know what, we can still have in-person discussions, or we can still have in-person learning. But now the challenges facing teachers and administrations and as well as communities and parents and students is that, what is that experience? How do we make sure that our students, particularly Black students, Latino students, students that are often been marginalized by a lot of school districts across the country, how do we make sure that they are engaged and stand at the forefront of the class of making the progress that they need to make? So here to talk to us a little bit about this is a sister who has been doing some tremendous training of students, of administrators, principals. She is a middle school starter. She has, so she understands the dynamic of what it takes to run schools. She's been a principal, and now she has been working with districts across the country to give them the insight that they need to make sure that their students and their school districts are successful in engaging parents, community, and students. We want to welcome to the airwaves of the culture here on the Black Star Network, Dr. Nadia Lopez. Dr. Lopez, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. How are you today, sis?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. How's your heart and spirit?
Oh, my heart and spirit is good. I'm on fire. It's Friday.
I hear it. I hear it.
First and foremost, Doc, let's talk a little bit about the work that you've been doing. You've been doing this work as working in the educational space. I mean, you are an educator, you are a teacher. And as a result of that, your time in the classroom and your time being in the schools has allowed you to see some things where you say, you know what, I'm not going to just teach, I'm going to work to improve the system and use what I know, take it from the classroom, use from my conversations, and use all of that great knowledge to figure out how do we create a more engaging and more progressive educational experience. My big question is, what do you think of the state of education right now in America, particularly when it comes to educating Black and brown students?
We're in a state of emergency. And I don't say that lightly. Having opened up a school in one of America's, what they consider poorest communities of Brownsville, but to me is the most resilient community. The difference was I had a belief system and I wasn't willing to conform to what the expectations were as it was set forth by the public education system. It is what it is. It has been designed to keep us in a box, to keep us as wheels in a cog. And so it takes visionary leaders who are going to be revolutionary in their approach. And what I mean by that is saying we have to recognize where our children are at. We have to understand that within our communities, there's a design to keep us oppressed, whether it's through policies, whether it's lack of resources, whether it's just the way in which our communities have been connected to law enforcement and even the healthcare system. It is all by design. So when we look at what's happening today, as it relates to our education system, I am out there on the front lines, training districts, supporting principals for them to start to redesign what school is supposed to look like, because we've been reimagining for a very long time. We know what our kids need. It's all about action. And so at this very moment, we have a number, of children who are behind academically, but that's nothing new. The problem is that we've gone back to business as usual, and business as usual was never helping our children. We have to, as families and as people within our own communities, recognize that we have responsibilities. We can't allow the school system to continuously dictate what our children learn. And that's what I want to, emphasize to parents out there and just community members. There was a time and place that we taught our children at home, and school was just another place for them to continue on this education, to develop relationships. Now we have relied so much on the school system that has changed the standards and how our children are learning. And that's why a lot of parents were struggling, because when you finally recognize that 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4, the way kids have to add things up is totally different from the way we had to do our addition. But we weren't part of the process. We weren't going to school meetings. We weren't asking the questions. And so what has been imposed on us right now has been designed to keep our children either in the prison system or low level when it comes to the economy. And so we have to start designing different curriculums and making sure that that's in our school systems by showing up and asking, what are our children learning and why? And why don't they reflect what our children look like and the things that they need in order to adapt and navigate, society as a whole?
So, Dr. Lopez, you created a program called the Lopez Effect. That's being used in districts across the country. And given the fact that you as an educational expert see that we're in a state of emergency right now, particularly when it comes to educating Black and brown children, what does your program, the Lopez Effect, what does that do, and what are some of the goals of the program?
So here's what the Lopez Effect is. It's actually me providing services to the schools. And so what I do is leadership coaching. We have so many educators in Black and brown spaces who are working in silos. And many of them are beat down because of the ongoing expectations. There's just so much pressure. All we hear is that we need to close the achievement gap, but we're not actually tackling the problems.
Which is what? What would you say is the big problem for the achievement gap? So closing the achievement gap.
Many, right? So let's.
I know. It's a big question, Doc.
Let's just start with English. So we have to just keep it real. What's happening in our households? There's not enough reading that's happening. We're giving our children iPads. We're sitting them in front of the TV. We're letting them look at social media and thinking that's supposed to teach them, and it's not. You know, we need to go back in the days of get a book, sit down with your child and read. We need to have that. The fundamentals of reading and writing, right? Like when I was a kid, you had to rewrite words over and over again. You had to look them up in a dictionary. Now we don't even have dictionaries in our houses. Everything is, you can look it up online. So there's no process of our children actually learning. You go in many houses, there's no books or libraries that we're actually creating in our households. Kids don't even have library cards. So if we're not doing that at home, and we're sending children into a school with a teacher who has to teach 30 or more children with varying needs, there is no way that the teacher can do all of that. And to be quite honest, teachers are not even taught the fundamentals of how to teach English. Okay. So we're putting all of that on the onus of the school when we're not doing the work we need to in our own households. And so that's where the gap is happening. So our kids are behind because they're coming from homes where they're not engaging in the learning process. They come into schools where the teachers don't have the skills and training or the experience to close the gaps and don't know how to tackle these problems. And so the only person who's hurting from this are our children, because when they have to take a test that's not even aligned to anything that they need in order to show progress or an understanding of what they know about the world and how to apply any skills to their future, they are then seen as a deficit. Right. And so because of that, now we have our children who are so far behind, they're not even able to get into middle school or high school with the skills that they need, which then makes it even more impossible for them to even consider going into college or even starting their own businesses. Because if they can't do reading, writing, and arithmetic, how could they start their own businesses, manage to even communicate via email or be able to invoice somebody if they don't even know how to add or subtract?
So here's the thing. I think that I think one of the big barriers for us to get into this place that you're outlining for us is, one is that parents have to get great involvement in their child's education. They have to be present, right?
Absolutely.
And if you look at, and this is why when we talk about the educational issue, it really is the conflation of so many other pieces of social issues and ills, because if schools are saying, hey, mom, dad, auntie, grandma, y'all need to be present. But if mom, dad, auntie, and grandma are working on PTA nights, working 2-3 jobs just to keep the lights on and take care of 3-4 children or 2 children, you know what I mean? Like, or they just don't have, literally, they just don't have the time
to
sit down
right?
and say, okay. So for those challenges, what would you recommend?
So I want to interrupt you because I appreciate what you're saying. You
Yes,
are absolutely right. But if we don't get this right, parents are going to have to make time to visit their kids in prison. Right. So it's a matter of what are you going to actually invest your time in? My parents were not from this country. My mother, she worked as a nurse's assistant. My dad worked in a lab as a photographer. And so my mother's 6th grade education, my dad's almost kind of high school education, they relied on the education system, like to teach me the things that was going to get me through the American system. However, I don't care what time of the day it was. My mother was in the kitchen. I had books I had to read that she purchased or that someone gave us from another friend or family member that I read every single day. Magazines, newspapers. We cannot keep making this excuse. As long as we keep saying we don't have enough time, we have so many jobs. I get it. I'm a parent myself. But this society has been constructed in a way that it keeps us, the adults, busy, and our children relying on a system that when we learn through COVID is not even prepared. The question I want to ask you is how we call ourselves 21st century learning environments when we didn't even have the right for computers. We didn't have access to Wi-Fi. You had administrators who couldn't.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
No,
I look.
You know what I'm saying?
Look,
you had administrators.
I feel you the same way.
Administrators who couldn't even get on Zoom. Do you understand?
Yeah.
We couldn't even
Yeah.
facilitate meetings on a district level because the
Yes,
people
ma'am.
who are in charge didn't even know how to engage with the online process. So how do we now want the school system to do all of the work, right? And it's not even about just the parents. It requires a village mentality. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm 45. I come from a place and a time where someone took care of me when my mother wasn't there. It was a neighbor, right? It was the teacher who was in the school who was invested, right? Who gave my mother Xerox copies of comprehensive packages and extra books for me to read. But we have such a turnaround in our education system. Why? Because there's no respect for the education profession. We don't regard teachers as individuals with expertise. We have people coming in and out who are not invested in our children. And then oftentimes
I'm sorry, Doc. I got to ask you that question because I'm so happy. And I see you, sister. You're getting passionate. So I'm loving it.
I get passionate
I'm
about
loving
this.
it. Trust and believe. I love it. And here's the thing. When you say that we don't have respect for our education, my wife is an educator. Right. So there are certain things that I mean, the challenges she often outlines, working in the education space, something you're echoing. But that part that you say that we don't respect our educators, it made me think, unfortunately, it made me think of the Black community. Like there was a time in our culture where a little girl, and I'm just saying that this is what happened. A little girl was presented with two options in terms of her career path. You could be a nurse, you could be a teacher, right? And that was probably around the time that our parents were small. But now, of course, the options are open. But there's somewhere along the line, Doc, the respect that we have, and I'm saying as a community, the respect that we have for the educator, for the Black educator, for the teacher, it's like now parents are going against the teacher instead of working with the teacher to figure out, okay, how can I create an educational experience at home as well as at the school? And I don't know how that happened. I don't know how parents start to fight teachers, go back and forth, defending children, which we know children will be children. But now you're defending your child over a grown adult. And I don't know what happened to that breakdown. How did that happen?
So there was a lack of relationship building, right? And that was intentional, again, to make sure that parents didn't get involved in schools. And you could see the difference in who leads a school. So the strongest leaders know how to galvanize their parents. They build relationships. They're either from the neighborhood, they go to the family cookouts. They are invested in their families, right? So you see a different dynamic. But what has happened in our community is that we have made teachers into glorified babysitters. And so we're only concerned with dropping off our kids and then having them come home safely. Even with the babysitter, shout out to them. You actually have conversations when you drop off your child. You check in and you call to see how they're doing. Are they up? Have they slept? And then when you go and pick up your child, you make sure that they have all their supplies. You have a conversation. Was anything off today? And you kiki it up with the babysitter. Nowadays, parents are sending their kids to school, don't even know who the principal is, don't even know who the teachers are, don't know who's the safety officer. They leave the school, come back home. They're not asking them, how was your day? They're not looking in their book bags. They're not checking their notebooks. They don't know anything that's going on. That is our responsibility, folks. We are relying so much. And so teachers are tired because the first thing that the parent will say is, oh, my child is failing. You failing my child. Have you looked in their notebook? Have you checked to see what they were learning? Have you gone over their ABCs with them? Have you reviewed anything that's inside of their book? Even if you don't know what they're learning, simply asking them, tell me what you learned today. Tell me, how would you apply that? Show me an example. It can take you 10 minutes to ask your child that. And if you're not doing that, then you are failing your own children. And that's why when COVID happened, I had so many people reaching out to me, even friends of mine calling me like, how am I supposed to do this? And I said, yo, where were you? Like, this is March. What happened in September? What happened in December? I was so busy. I get it. You were busy. But guess what? Now your child is going to be behind. And because the way we're designed, we can't hold your child back. They're going to move on. And so now they're going to be behind another year. So we have a responsibility. Teachers are doing the most that they can without any support. They're not getting the professional development that they need. They're not getting mental health support to deal with all the vicarious trauma that's coming in from the community, coming in from the children. They're not getting asked, are they okay? And they're still showing up. And what you're getting is someone who used to give you 1,000% giving you 10% because they have nothing else to give.
So how do you remedy that, Doc? How do you remedy that from the teacher side I'm speaking of? You know, how does the community show the teacher, okay, your administration might not be up to par, but as a result of it, we're going to do more from the community standpoint to support you. How does that happen?
So you want to engage teachers, right? So all of us know a teacher. How can I help you? Start with that. How can I help you? What do you need? What type of resources do you need for your classroom? How can I volunteer and come into your classroom? As a parent, what can I do at home in order to support my child? Do you have any recommendations, whether it's something that I could use as in terms of an online platform? Are there books that I can get? Do you have anything that you can provide me with so that I can be a facilitator of what you're doing in the classroom to now connect it into my household? We have to start engaging in those conversations. You should have the email of the teacher. You should have a contact, some type of contact information. Now, I'm not telling you to harass this teacher all day, every day, because they are tired. By the time they get home, they need a minute, right? Right. But we have to work in partnership because education should not stop as soon as the child gets home. It's a continuum. So whether or not you can actually sit and do all the work, just being present and telling your child to sit next to you while you're washing the clothes, while you're preparing the food. I used to sit in the kitchen with a chair with my mother while she was cooking, doing my homework, because she was very clear. I don't know nothing that you have on that paper, but I do know that you better get it done. That's how I understood. You understand? And she made it very clear. You are to ask every question before you come home so you understand the work.
There it is. There it is. Hey, Doc, I wanna just stop it right there because so many people are checking in, and the whole spirit in your message today is resonating with so many folks that are part of our online culture crew. So people are checking in, wanting to share their thoughts. And I want to just pose a couple of those questions, those ideas. First, let's go back to. Man, big shout out to my culture crew. Y'all always got a lot to say. All right, Janae, you said kudos to teachers. They always having to learn, adapt with no real time off, but none, but have to get it done daily. Absolutely. I would be exhausted trying to keep up with all the changes and the poor behavior. Woo! Big shout out to you, Janae. Yes, I've seen it. I've seen my wife's coworkers, Doc. I know it. My wife man, I see it. So she is right. She is absolutely correct about that. And you certainly talked about that. Melissa Terry checked in. You said it boils down to money, 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 and old-fashioned ways of education. Every classroom should have a computer. Everybody should be doing the work on the computers. The information should be endless and so many documentaries. That's right. Jerry Carson Chambers, you checked the standardized tests are part of the issue. Doc, I've heard that. And Jerry, I appreciate you for bringing this up. Doc, I have heard that constantly. My wife has even complained that now the educational system is more geared towards passing a test than it is to teaching and helping students to learn ideas and concepts. What's your take on that?
We're focused on capitalization and profits of companies who have basically controlled our education system through standardized testing, right? So standardized tests are created by companies. And these companies also have professional development programs, or they're aligned to other companies. So our books, all the curriculum, they're like Common Core, but when we teach our kids all of those things and we look at the test, there's no alignment. It's just at the end of the day, everybody's making money. And they utilize standardized tests as a way of forcing us to getting funding. So how we look at standardized testing is based off of the data that's collected. That data determines whether or not schools are showing proficiency, meaning schools are showing children are on grade level. And if they're not, right, then you are failing school, right? They tier you as priority focused, depending on what state you're in, they tier your schools. The issue is here in the United States, we test every single year. You have countries in Europe and throughout Asia, they test at certain age groups, right? So they may test, let's say in 3rd grade to get a baseline, then they'll test again in 6th or 7th grade, then they'll test again in, let's say, 11th grade or 12th grade. We test every year. So what happens is our children don't have mastery because the teacher is just trying to teach to the standard, right? So if I have a child who's in my class right now, who's supposed to be on a 5th grade level, but they're on a 3rd grade level, I need to teach them from that 3rd grade and make the connection and bridge them to 5th grade. But the way our system is designed, that kid needs to start learning 5th grade work and they need to master 5th grade work to get to 6th grade. We forget about all the 3rd, 4th, 5th that came up to that, or kindergarten all the way to 5th grade. You understand what I'm saying? So when you go to other countries, they recognize we need to make sure that all children get to a certain level. So they have time. They're not pressured into it has to be done by this time. And all we're doing is perpetuating this fear of failure in our children and in our teaching staff, as well as the principals. There's a level of pressure that comes from the top that keeps making us say that we're measuring up to a standard that no one is achieving.
Absolutely. Doc, we got a couple of moments left. McCole checked in and said, Dr. Lopez is talking right. Schools have been tasked to more than what they are supposed to be doing. Learning should start at home. Absolutely. Rashida, you checked in. McCole, thank you, sis. Rashida, you checked in and said PlayStation, Xbox, and YouTube are the babysitter now. And we didn't even get a chance to really talk about the impact of social media, but I came across a story, Doc, where they said that now because of the pandemic, but also because of the attachment that children have to their devices and to television, that the attention span of children has declined as a result of all of these different things that are taking the attention away. What's your take on that very quickly? I know it's a big question, but what kind of guidance or recommendations would you have to make sure that we kind of help our children to break away from these devices and to restore their attention?
So here's the thing. We again, as adults, failed our kids because we're doing it ourselves. Our attention span has decreased considerably. As educators, what I'm going to say is that we need to integrate social media into our kids' learning so that there is a powerful way of utilizing what we have for good. So during the pandemic, what we did with my physical education department was to actually utilize TikTok as a form of having our kids engage and compete against each other and monitoring progress. And so it forced the kids to get up. It forced them to be participants in their own learning. And so that was something that we were able to continue on. But it's all about how do you use it and also teach children the benefits and then how it could also be a hindrance to them. I think that we don't educate them on those things. And so when we say you can't, like everything else, the minute you say you can't, people are destined and more inclined to want to do the thing. So how can we take it and say, don't spend so much time, but utilize it in this fashion and then teach them how to do that. That can change the game.
Dr. Lopez, we got a couple of moments left, and I know this is a big conversation. And again, I would highly, encourage you to come back onto the show because you're just touching on so many different things. But what are the key things that parents, students, community, and teachers to look for in this upcoming school year? We got a lot of challenges, a lot of changes across the country in terms of how education is presented to teachers and students. Any recommendations, any ideas on what parents need to do? How do we get prepared for the school year?
I'm going to always say this, you have to be present. I want parents to understand this. And I tell this to every single time I opened up every school year. I said to my parents, you are allowing me to be in the presence of your gift. It is not your job to give it away. I'm supposed to be in the presence of your gift. So own and know that this is your child and be part of the process. Don't show up for graduations. Don't show up just for the school events. I need you to be here to participate in Parent Teachers Association. I need you to volunteer. And even if you don't have that time, just check in. You have to ask these simple questions. Who's my child's teacher? And get a list of who the teachers are. If it's more than one teacher, because if they're in elementary school, they may have one or two teachers, but when they get to middle and high school, they have a multitude of teachers. Ask your child every day, did all your teachers come in today? Ask them what they learned. Ask them for their notebooks. It is your child. They are living in your house. You go in that book bag and you check those things. And then make sure that you are asking the teachers questions about how you can be present without being present. What can I do at home to support the learning of my child? Where can I get additional information from? And as parents, you can't do it all by yourself. We get that. But who's the godmother? Who's the godfather? Who are the uncles, the aunts, the cousins, the sisters? We need to start pulling in the village, because I'm going to tell you this, when we fail our children, we can't keep showing up to funerals and we can't keep showing up to prison sentencing. That's when everybody gets together. We need to be there now while our children are still free, and we have an opportunity to impact their lives and be present for their future.
I love it. Dr. Nadia Lopez, award-winning educator, program specialist. She is the designer and founder of the Lopez Effect, a program that can be implemented in school districts across the country. And Dr. Lopez, very quickly, what's the best way folks can get more information about you and the work that you're doing?
They can find it on my website, www.thelopezeffect.com. And I'm on all social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at The Lopez Effect. There
it is right there. Dr. Lopez, we appreciate your insight and your expertise. And again, I'm serious, Doc. We just started the conversation. You're about to be BFF with the culture right now at this point.
I'm down for it.
To bring you back on.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time. And thank you so much for creating this platform. We need it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nadia Lopez. Thank you for checking in, sis, and being good for the culture. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about healing the family. Yep, the Black family. We know that we have been subjected to so many different crises and challenges, but how do we start the process to heal? We're going to be checking in with Tiffany Green Abdullah, author of the book, The Bean Pie, and how she talked about everything from breaking generational curses to building new legacies. So we'll have that conversation. And then later, let's talk about love and relationships. We're going to check in with our relationship expert, LaDawn Black, to discuss a new study that shows that, guess what? Men are the loneliest group of people right now in America, heterosexual men. I'm going to break down that data for you. So stay with us. A whole lot coming at you on the second hour of the culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be back.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Folks, welcome back to the second hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure y'all check out the first hour. Great conversations talking about the latest developments in this whole classified documents drama with former President Trump, as the judge has decided to release the details about what was in that search warrant. So we talked a little bit about that. And then we just had a fantastic conversation with Dr. Nadia Lopez, who is an award-winning educator and the founder of the Lopez Effect, to talk about how we get prepared to go back to schools and to simply put it out there to the parents, be present this year. So if you missed those conversations, make sure you check us out on the replay and definitely show your continued support for us at blackstarnetwork.com, where we continue to bring you those discussions and having those conversations like no one else. So make sure y'all go check that out at blackstarnetwork.com. All right, folks, for the second hour, we got some fantastic discussions to jump into. I wanted to have a real deep dive into something that I think that a lot of us, we talk about, but then we don't know how to navigate those conversations, whether it's with our families or outside of the families. And so today, I'm very, very happy to talk to a sister who is an author, a life coach, and here's a sister that's been doing the deep dive work of knowing who her family is, not just in terms of the family tree, but also how to heal from the traumas and how to get past some of those curses of the family, so that way we can be in a better position of generational wealth and success. Now, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about mind, body, and spirit. My next guest, Sister Tiffany Green Abdullah, she is the author of the book, The Bean Pie, folks. Check this out. When you put this out there, me being a Black Muslim, well, she's speaking to my soul right now, The Bean Pie. It's a fantastic book. It talks about family, remembering of our family's faith, fortitude, and forgiveness. It is available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble's website. We are happy to have our dearest beloved sister on the air with us today, Sister Tiffany Green Abdullah, to talk about family hearing. First and foremost, assalamu alaikum, Sister Tiffany. How are you, ma'am?
Wa alaikum salam, Juma Mubarak.
Yes, ma'am. Juma Kareem, sister. First and foremost, dear Sister Tiffany, again, I am one who grew up with the bean pie. My family joined the Nation of Islam back in 1969. So in Baltimore, and that has been the household, a very Islamic household growing up. So I understand the power. And when I saw your book, I was like, woo! I got very, very excited about some of the things that you pointed out in your book. But let's talk a little bit about this whole idea of building families and creating a space where our families are healed. First and foremost, Sister Tiffany, talk to us about The Bean Pod, this book. Why did you decide to write such a book?
You know, I wrote this book.
Did we lose our sister? All right, look, we're going to deal with the technical glitches very quickly. Let's take a quick pause. When we come back, let's have our conversation with Sister Tiffany Green Abdullah. Folks, stay with us. We got a lot to get to here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, welcome back to The Culture. We got our Sister Tiffany Green Abdullah, who is the author of the book, The Bean Pie, Remembering of Our Family's Faith, Fortitude, and Forgiveness, a book about healing, a book about breaking some of the generational curses, and a book about making sure that our families are in a better space mentally, spiritually, and with each other. Sister Tiffany, thank you so much again, sis, for being on the show. I wanted to know, what was the inspiration behind you writing this book?
It was a lot of inspiration. Number one, all my life I had been told that my great aunt created the bean pie. So when
Wait a minute, hold on, sister. Now you dropped a little bit of history on me there right now. Your great aunt created the bean pie.
Yes, that's what the book is about.
What was your aunt's name?
Daisy Scaife.
Wow.
Daisy, and she's from Opelika, Alabama, and she moved to Detroit, Michigan around 1926. So she was one of the first Muslims. She wasn't Muslim initially, but through dawah and meeting Farajii Muhammad, she became Muslim.
Wow. Yeah, I don't understand how deep that history really is, but if you know the history of the Nation of Islam, and if you know the history of Islam in America, you know that this is your family is a pivotal part of the great history. Okay, yes, ma'am. Wow, that's a blessing. I did not know that. That is really, really a blessing. All right, sis. So you said the bean pie had inspired you.
Right. I mean, so as I converted to Islam and started to sort of secret shop the history of the bean pie, there wasn't a history. It was really not a lot there. And so I really realized like maybe my family's sitting right in the middle of it, and that this sort of folklore in my family is more than folklore, it's truth. And so I started researching my ancestry, researching the Nation of Islam. It's very research heavy within the book. But I started writing, putting everything together right at the top of 2020, right as COVID was starting. And it took me about 2 years to write the book. But, you know, besides that history of the bean pie, it was really about documenting my history for my children, for future generations, and also to tell not just my great aunt stories, but my grandmother's story and my mother's story. And then towards the end, I wind up making it my memoir as well, and putting my story in there, because as I wrote it, I realized like, even though we were all different generations, we were still struggling with a lot of the same issues around trauma, around mental illness, around drug addiction, those issues were still pervasive throughout the multiple generations of our family.
So, and I'm so happy, Sister Tiffany, that, you know, I mean, we're using the metaphor like the bean pie, but then it requires us to kind of go deeper into our family history. You know, when we look at some of the challenges facing the Black family, there's a long list of them, right? Especially now, one of the big challenges is the fact that, one, there is a culture of secrecy about trauma in the family, right? Where we just don't talk about it enough. Mm-hmm. Whether it's trauma based on sex, sexual abuse, whether it's drug use, any type of trauma. And then the other culture of that I think has really that we don't know the history. We don't, you know, families, unfortunately, we don't take the time to sit down. Like grandma used to be the griot of the family, where she would share those stories. But if the older grandmother is no longer living, those stories go along with her. I would say the newer, younger grandmother may not even know those stories. So we have a lot of challenges. How did we kind of overcome those things? How did we break up the culture of secrecy first, and then let's talk about, you know, being more familiar with your family? How does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I mean, it takes a lot of vulnerability to be able to, break down secrecy and to tell the truth, and I mean, and this is a book written from my perspective, but also historical in the sense that I grounded it in the history of what was going on in those times, in the context, whether that's the crack epidemic, whether that's the development of hip hop, and how all of that plays into our lives and our families. I wanted to really put my family, in that perspective in terms of where we are, where we were, and still are, and where we're going in the future in terms of the history of really the world, but this country and globally. So first, I think you have to be willing to tell the truth, and be okay with your truth. And it took me a lot. I mean, but we were going through a pandemic also, so I used that as an opportunity to really tell our story. And and you brought up the term griot. I mean, and I never really thought about myself as a griot, but I guess that is exactly what I have become, in a sense, is telling those stories and documenting those stories, going back into the past, but also really looking towards the future. And some of my, my other work and stuff, things that I'm still working on, is really looking at that future.
So, and Sister Tiffany, I think, and this is something that I'm, my family and I have started to do. Like my mother would have been that person that would help to connect the stories and build and show the relationships of those things. But it sounds like that maybe Black families in particular, like we should have a person who has a love of history, a person who's willing to create the safe spaces to have these very uncomfortable conversations, serving as the lead to start to break up some things, to start to bring some things to light. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not necessarily about publishing a book, right. Because I think, I mean, I could have just done this as a family project and made photocopies at Kinko's and sent it to everybody. I think the power is still there, but it's about really trying to understand who we are in context of the world, and how we move forward, and how we, really heal some of the things that we've gone through in this country, with enslavement, with the Great Migration, with the lynchings and all of that. Like, all of that is trauma. Everything up to 2020 and beyond, from George Floyd to, all of that is trauma. And we know, with some of the science that's come out recently, that trauma is passed from generation to generation in our genes. And so the only way to sort of overcome that is to face it. You got to face it, and if we're not willing to face it, we're never going to get past this. We're always going to be behind the 8 ball, if we're not willing to, sit down and have those hard conversations. And they are very hard conversations. It has not been easy for my family in this book, to be honest with you, so it's hard, but I'm willing to carry that burden and put it out there, because it's about our legacy. And it's sorry. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. And you know what? I'm happy that you kind of emphasize the fact that it's not hard. And what I have also learned too, and you can say yay or nay on this, Tiffany, but bringing in, some of these issues are so big and so heavy and so severe and so serious that you might want, that family should really look into possibly going into therapy, or bringing a therapist in a very controlled, constructive dialogue space.
Yes.
Because the pain is just so deep. Did you have to do that?
I haven't done it yet, but it's something that I think should be done. If the family is willing to come to the table and do that. But we haven't done anything like that yet. But I totally agree with you. I'm a big believer in therapy. It's something that I do regularly. And I've done for years, and will continue to do, because it never hurts. It always makes me stronger. It's making my family stronger. It's making my marriage stronger. So that's an important part of the healing, is you got to heal yourself first. I can't tell anybody to heal if I'm still messed up, for lack of a word.
Right. Now let's talk a little bit about the storytelling of the family. How were you able to keep those stories together? Like, did you have to, you was talking about pictures and everything, but those pictures, how did you bring those pictures together? And is there a recommendation on how to handle all those artifacts and keep those stories intact?
The pictures in my book came a little bit later, because I've always been the one who sort of kept all the pictures.
Okay.
And I am kind of, I guess, the historian of the family. And there wasn't, there's basically 4 characters in the book: my great-great aunt, my grandmother, my mother, and myself. But the underlying foundation of the book is the whole family. And we don't have a lot of assets as a family, but what we do have is our pictures. And our pictures tell a really beautiful story of togetherness, of how we all, come, how we share social time, how we love, graduations, all of that. So, I wanted to put those pictures in because it told a different story, told, a separate story than the book. And the book itself is really like 4 books in one, because it's telling these women's stories. And, African-American women, our stories don't get told at all most of the time. Very, very, very often. Very few times our stories are really told to the depth that I, wanted to tell the stories. And it's a blessing that I had the opportunity to work with my mother for the last 2 years of her life, to really document her story and get her perspective on, her mother and her great aunt, to document that. And so that, was a blessing for me.
No, that would sound like a blessing. And in this day and time where pictures are kept on an electronic device, do you have any recommendations? Should folks print out those pictures and then put them somewhere, or, because these devices, they can go up at any moment. So I want to make sure, how do you preserve those pictures and physically preserve those pictures, to that way future generations will always go back to them?
Right. I mean, I still believe in good old fashioned photo books.
Oh,
You know, there's a lot of technology where you can like upload
yeah,
your photos. They'll send you
yeah,
like a put together, little magazine of your photos, like and it's free. You pay for shipping, it's like $10 or something. So I would recommend doing that, or doing that at least periodically, or doing that once a year, because we have all these pictures on our phones or iPhones or Android, whatever you're using. You've got tons of pictures. But if that phone goes into the water, or you lose your iCloud account, or you can't get into your Apple account, you don't have your photos. I mean, and so you've lost literally a generation of documentation. So,
mm,
I still believe people should print pictures. You should still be taking pictures of your kids and putting them up on a wall. Like that's still important, even though we do live in a digital age. You can use some of those digital tools to make that a little bit easier of how to get those pictures off your phone into little books, free apps. There's tons of free apps
right.
that you can make books, or you can get the little 4x6 photos sent to you. Upload your photos and get those sent to you. So I would totally recommend people still do that,
Right.
because there's Facebook and all of that stuff, but you
Right.
don't
Right.
always want to use all that.
Right. And there's something, and I think there's some great value. There's something special about pulling out the family album, the photo album, right? Because that in itself could be an opportunity to bring the family over. I mean, I know that family come over for holidays and special events and dinners and things like that. But when you say, all right, guys, we're going through the family album, now you really got the full attention of family.
Right.
And I remember my mother and my grandmother, and just seeing them old school pictures from the 50s and 60s and 70s, it was just like you sitting there, and as a child, just sitting there and just soaking up all that history. And
Right.
it just in that moment when you have the whole family around you, it's something very, very powerful about that. And I think that's a part of the culture that is slowly dying. And that I think that it's worthy to be revisited. As we got a few moments left with you, Sister Tiffany, and I appreciate you in sharing your story, but you also have studied economy. And when we're talking about building generational wealth, what is one of the things that you can offer as you've looked at your family history, you've done all of this work in terms of healing, but now you're saying, okay, we need to take the family unit to the next level. We need to build that generational wealth. Tell us a little bit how you went about doing that. Not just of course, you wrote a book, and that's
Right.
one way to generate family wealth, but there are other ways. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, one of the things that I do in addition to selling the book is that I make bean pies, and I sell those
Come on.
with the book. So you can go on my website, thebeanpie.com. If you're local here in Atlanta, you can get those bean pies from me. But also I and my husband, and other members of my family, we're entrepreneurs. And so my husband is an architect. So we run our family's architecture firm. And, one of the things that we talk with our children about is all going to architecture school and taking on and being the legacy for that business. And if they choose not to, then they're starting from zero, and they would have not been able to utilize the 20, 30, 40, 50 years that, he and I would have put into that business. So, I think having discussions with your children when they're young about what industries they go into, and that they can be a legacy for something, that you're starting or something your grandparents started. I mean, look at the Trump family, that's a legacy family. They're all working together, for the same common goal. And it's been a misnomer about, all this individuality and, I need to just do what I want to do and live my life. But that's not how wealth is created. That's not how any of the wealthy
Come
families.
on, Sister Tiffany. Come on, sis.
They didn't get
I'm sorry, sis. I'm just excited because you absolutely that is not how wealth is generated. You don't. I mean, yes, individually you can get a little money. You can get a lot more and build and really build more as a family. Absolutely.
Right. So that's really it. You got to work together, and you got to have some kind of common goal that you're all working towards. I mean, because as a people, we're 200 plus years behind white families in terms of economics. So, how do we jump over? How do we build and gain 20, 30, 40, 50 years at a time? You can only do that through, cooperative economics. That's the only way that works. And, we just really have to get it together and start to work together through, shows like yours and everything that, Roland is doing with the network, to tell our stories and to know that there's folks out here like us who are writing, who are telling stories, who are trying to create and regain our legacy around different industries that we already, created before.
Yeah.
Forgot, and
did we lose our system? All right. Looks like we had a connection issue with our sister Tiffany Green and Abdullah. Okay, we got her back. All right, cool.
I was just going to say, with the pictures and things like that, the other thing I wanted to bring up, why that's important, is because in my research, I had to go through older cousins to figure out who my second and third grandmother were. That information was forgotten. And so if you don't have those pictures, if you don't write those family trees down within 2 generations, it's possible that your children's children won't even know your name.
Damn.
And I was like, no to that. They're gonna know who I am. Right. I'm gonna have a whole bunch of these books all over the place at everybody's house because they need to know who they are, and you can go 2 generations.
Oh. Let's see if we can get King Kingdom. Let's work on that, dear brother. As we trying to get our sister Tiffany Green Abdullah back for the final few minutes. Folks, if you've been enjoying the conversation just as much as I have been, definitely check in. But y'all know what we're getting at. We got to break the generational cycles. We got to share our stories, and then we got to focus on building generational wealth, folks. Legacy building. Generational wealth. All right. So, much love to Sister Tiffany Green Abdullah. Folks have been checking in about this. Let me just share this very quickly. Sandy, you checked in. Good to hear from you, Sandy. You said one person to relay the stories and the younger to preserve it. Facts. Which is why we wanted to have this conversation, because this is a really an art and skill at the same time that can be used for the family, that we can start to implement with all of this stuff that is happening in this country, and from public health issues to all this other stuff. We're losing, physically losing people. We're losing generations of stories, generation of wealth, all this knowledge, right? Because we haven't taken the time to preserve it. So Sandy, thank you so much for your thought. Chris V, you said she just reminded me to back up my photos locally, right? Hey, Chris, I'm feeling the same way. I'm literally just sitting here like, yo, I got to talk to the wife. We're going to have to crack out buy some new photo albums. We got some, but we need to update those joints. So I'm with you, Chris. Thank you for checking in, man. James Jones Bay, you said much love and respect, Sister Abdullah, for the truth. Peace to the gods and the goddesses. Islam to my beloved Moors. All praises due to Allah. Absolutely. Appreciate you, James, Brother James, and thank you for checking in. Good to hear from you. Adept, you checked in and said cooperative economics. Absolutely. And look what she said. You learn how to build the generational wealth when you go back to looking into the businesses and the work of your family. We often, you see it in the Italian movies, the mafia movies, the family business. Well, what is your family business? What is your family business? Yeah, you can work a job. You can certainly work, be at a place. But what is the thing that your family is going to benefit from? What is the thing that your family does well? What is the thing that your family can benefit from? What is your family business? I know what mine is. My wife and I, we are going in that direction. I already know what ours is. What is your family business? You could do everything else, and I'm going to teach my son and daughter. Y'all could do everything else, but here's what the family business is. And it's telling stories on this side. All right, so that is important for you to identify. And I'm saying you don't have to branch out to your aunts and uncle. Right there in your household, ask the question, well, what should our family business should be? And once you do that history, then you'll find out. And lastly, just to let the folks know, and she dropped all the way out on the technical side. So we're going to have to bring our sister Tiffany Green Abdullah back. But check out her book, The Bean Pie. Is a very, very powerful book and a testimony of her family, how they got through generational trauma, how they got through those curses, healing, and most importantly, how they learned from all of that to get into a better space. So definitely we'll be doing our due diligence to bring Sister Tiffany Green Abdullah back onto the show so she can continue to have those conversations. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. As we move forward, let's check in. As we talk about families, let's talk about love and relationships. We got our relationship expert, LaDon Black, to check in to talk about this new study that says that single men, heterosexual single men, are the loneliest groups of people in America. Sisters, I didn't say it. I didn't say it. That's what the study says. I'll break it down for you. Stay with us. That's coming up right now in a few moments here, right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
An angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, thank you so much for tuning in to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. It is time for us to have another conversation, and I'm just enjoying how we're ending the week today with so many strong, dynamic women, sisters that are just constantly bringing it. So big shout out to all of the sisters in all facets of life that are doing it, and you're doing it really, really big. Today, we wanted to talk a little bit about love and relationships. There is a recent Psychology Today article that was featured, and it's called The Rise of Lonely Single Men. And it's by a psychologist by the name of Mr. Greg Matos. And he writes about this trend that shows that a growing number of heterosexual men are checking the long-term single box. According to his study, that women have the advantage when it comes to dating apps. Take a look at this, folks. Mr. Matos said that over the last 30 years, let me make sure I'm saying this right. Over the last 30 years, men have become a larger portion of that growing group of long-term single people. And while you don't actually need to be in a relationship to be happy, men typically are happier and healthier when partnered. Now, there are three broad trends in the relationship landscape that suggest heterosexual men are in for a rough road ahead. Let me just share with you what he said. Quote, number one, he said, dating apps, whether you're just starting to date or you're recently divorced and dating again, dating apps are a huge driver of new romantic connections in the United States. The only problem is that upwards of 62% of users are men, and many women are overwhelmed by the number of options they have. Competition in online dating is fierce, and lucky in-person lucky in-person chance encounters with dreamy partners are rarer than ever. Wow. So if you're on the dating app, that could be a problem. Number two, relationship standards with so many options. It's not surprising that women are increasingly selective. I do a live TikTok show and speak with hundreds of audience members every week. And according to the doctor, he said, I hear recurring dating themes from women between the ages of 25 and 45. They prefer men who are emotionally available, who are good communicators, and who share their values. And number three, skills deficiency. For men, this means a relationship skills gap that is not, if not addressed, will likely lead to fewer dating opportunities and longer periods of being single. There's less patience for poor communication skills today. The problem for men is that emotional connection is the lifeblood of healthy, long-term love, and it requires all the skills that families still are not consistently teaching young boys. Woo! Woo! I had to bring in an expert. So we got our relationship expert. Very happy that my sister is able to join me on this Friday. Sister LaDawn Black is joining us, folks, to talk a little bit about this relationship whole thing. Oh my gosh, LaDawn.
I love this piece. There's so much we can talk about.
Woo! Now look, this ain't Kevin Samuel stuff. This is no.
You did some research.
This is. You know, I know some of us are still caught up in that drama.
Yes.
But no, this is very interesting. He's talking, Mr. Matos is talking about heterosexual men. He's talking about, and if you look at it, and there's a piece that the Root put out. There's a sister that wrote for the Root. She's like, what? Men are lonelier? That's a growing. Look at it. The rise of lonely single men. Really? This sister is not trying to hear it. She like, please. Black women are lonely. Please. So first, LaDawn, would you agree with this assessment? Do you agree with this research that men are becoming one of the largest group of single people in the country, heterosexual men?
You know what? I believe it's true. I think that the sister who wrote for the Root definitely has a point that, you know, you break it down maybe by age and by ethnicity, you're going to have different results. But I think across the board, it's true. I mean, if you watch any of the dating shows, if you watch, you know, social media comments, you know, there was a recent post that went viral where a woman was like, look, men, you better hook up with these women in your 20s and 30s because she was a nurse, and a lot of people, she said, a lot of the people that she runs into at the end of their lives are single men, and they have no one, no kids, no wives, no one to see about them. So it's definitely something that's real. But yes, we can definitely apply an ethic lens to it and see it a bit differently as well.
So do you agree with the Mr. Machos when he points out the fact that, you know, men aren't emotionally available? Like a big part of why men are single. And again, folks, I'm putting this, heterosexual men are single. We can say heterosexual Black men, but the big part of it is that men are not emotionally available. We don't have the skills. We're not making the effort. And therefore, that puts us in a space where women feel like, hey, I'm not getting nothing from this situation.
We know that that's absolutely true. I mean, if you're on social media at any point during the day, you see women constantly saying, look, you know, I'm trying to communicate. He won't communicate. I don't know what he's talking about, you know, why he can't come up with anything other than what you're doing every day, you know, as a text. You know, women are really desiring partners. You know, they want to be your wife. They want to do those things for you, but they want a partner. They want someone who can kind of give and take when it comes to the emotional side as well.
Yeah. So how does that start? Right? Because there are a number of factors, and I talk about this with my wife and with other women. Like how does a man, and I say, the doctor talked about this. He said between the ages of 25 to 45. And let me tell you, LaDon, I thought I was crazy. I was like, why? I was like, some of these younger dudes, they real different. These guys are not the same. Like the mode of the ideas of manhood is very different than what and I'm in my 40s. I'm like, damn, am I that old? Like, am I that old fashioned? I'm serious every time. You know, I mean, just the ideas. And when I see some of these brothers, like I look at social media, I look at Twitter and all that stuff, and I'm like, bro, you really believe this?
Like, you can't believe it. And a lot of it has to do with how they're raised. Did you see healthy relationships growing up? You know, how did your parents interact? Were there two parents in the home? Also, you have to keep in mind, too, that unfortunately, I hate to throw things in women's laps, but, you know, how are we raising our sons? That was one of the points that was mentioned in the article, is that a lot of times we're not raising our men or our sons to be emotionally open, to be vulnerable, to be able to communicate on deeper levels. So when they go out there on the dating scene, they don't really know how to relate outside of, you know, you're fine. What can I get from you? And, you know, we just hooking up and hanging out. They don't know how to go deeper because they've never seen it and no one's raised them to do it.
So as a relationship specialist, as one who talks to people and hears people, right? And you said that we just don't know how to connect beyond just the surface stuff. I see a lot of men, especially now, we put more time in our physical stature than we do in understanding ourselves, or we understanding, you know, a potential partner. How do you change that? Because the culture in which we live in emphasizes you have to look a certain way, right? So brothers it seems like a lot of Black men start to look the same to me now. You know what I mean? We got either you got facial hair, or your hair's got locks in it. I mean, we all look we have like a stereotype. But I'm always wondering, like, but how much time do we spend on our spirituality? How much time do we spend on damn, LaDon. You said no.
And this is the thing. A lot of times what we'll do is worry about the surface stuff. So you're educated, you're successful, you have nice things, you're able to provide a nice life. But when she says, well, how do you feel about something? Or what was your childhood like? Or how do you feel about your relationship with your father or your relationship with your mother? She's not getting anything concrete. So a lot of times brothers are dealing with issues that they maybe should, you know, seek out some sort of spiritual guidance or maybe even therapy on. And then if the issues aren't even that deep, they really haven't learned how to connect to their deeper selves. And so for a woman who wants to be a partner, and she says, look, I can buy my own house, I can buy my own car, I can take care of my own kids. You know, I would love to have a partner and a dad, but I can do that as well on my own. You know, she wants a little bit more. She's not just looking for that surface financial support, that old school thing. She wants a true relationship. She wants an emotional connection.
Yeah. And it seems like in our culture right now, that's hard. That's very, very hard for a man, and because manhood is being debated right now on so many different levels. What you wear, what you believe, what's your expectations? Do you understand the role of being a man? Like, all of that is being debated right now. So how much of that is playing on the mind of a 25 to 45-year-old right now? Is that taking up a lot of mental space?
It does. I mean, my son is 21 and he talks about simps all the time. And I'm like, well, what is a simp? Oh, well, it's a guy who does anything for a woman. I said, this sounds like a nice guy. But they have this mindset.
Hey, Don, big shout out to you for checking it.
But you have to, because you have to educate him. Because clearly he was like, well, I mean, that's just a man who'll do anything for a woman. And he's a simp. And I'm like, but he's a nice guy. He's attentive. He cares what she thinks.
Where did he get that from? Because you already don't push over a woman. Where do you get that from?
What it is it's socialization. It's social media. It's what you're hearing on a daily basis. It's how his friends talk. Don't be weak. Don't be a simp. Don't do everything for her because, you're going to be out in the streets looking crazy. And I'm like, yes, for the wrong woman, yes, you can be taken advantage of. But for the right woman, she'll appreciate it and she'll give you even more because you're such a nice guy. So it really is sort of this culture right now where you don't give too much, you don't expose too much. And unfortunately for men right now, it's working against them because women are really sort of in the opposite space of, how can we connect on a deeper level? And so they have the time now and they have the space and they have, the area, in their relationship lives to really say, if this isn't what I want, I'm not going to go there. I don't have to put up with it.
Right. And I would think that if you're out there, if you're on the market, if you're dating right now, that you should put more emphasis on self-development rather than trying to fit a certain image or profile. That's what I would think, right? Because now that gets further along versus you just, you looking good on social media. Like, yeah, girl, he got them big muscles and he's driving his car. I would think that, seriously, I would think that. And I know, and it's off, and it's like, for me, I'm like, what dudes, do we not get it? Like, all the available women, even married women and women that in relationships with Don are saying, y'all all saying the same thing. And it's like a brother's like, I don't hear you. You're going to get this. You're going to get this dude right here. Like, I just don't get it.
And I think what they don't realize is, and to go back to the original, study, is that, I think in a lot of men's minds, they really have this mentality that women, that like there's 6 women for every 1 man. And in some major cities, that still is the case. But when you look at online dating, that is not the case because women are able to, swipe left, swipe right. They're able to take in a lot of conversation from different men from all around the world. So they really have this huge pool of men to really consider. And I think that because online dating is growing, that's really where we're seeing the impact where women are like, I don't have to settle. I don't have to engage in conversation. I don't have to take this to a face-to-face meeting. If you're not a good fit, if we're not communicating well, if I'm not getting anything from you, I don't need to pursue this. And then if you take it to sort of the face-to-face, general way or normal way or traditional way that people meet, if I have a conversation with you and I'm not getting anything but surface, and you'll cut on any dating show and you'll hear that and you're like, oh, he's just giving me surface. And really what a woman is saying is, I have no sense of what your story is. Who are you? What do you believe? Yeah. What are your values? Where is this going? They want to understand that because they no longer just need you as a provider and a support.
So there seems to be like 2 extremes in that. One being that you can be an oversharer where you're like, soon as you meet somebody, it's like, hey, this is my last relationship and this is what happened. And then, that's the first thing. But then on the other side, of course, is the other extreme, like you said. And one of the things that I've just kind of like looking at and seeing in the culture is the fact that you have women want so much of your story at the very beginning. So just as much as you say, I hear lots of say, well, I don't know nothing about you. It's like some women do want all of that story. Well, tell me everything happening. And it's like, for a man that's dating, he goes from one woman that we want everything, another woman that say, okay, let's slow walk through this journey of getting to know each other. He's confused.
Well, we need to unconfuse men, and really where that comes in.
We slow.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say you're slow. Men are wonderful, but
no, we are.
But the thing is, you have to know.
We just process. No, I'm just saying that we process stuff differently, right? I mean, based on a particular timeline. Women, y'all have a timeline. Men, we have a timeline, but our timelines, of course, aren't always matching. So we process things a little differently.
But also, I think as a man, or even as a person in a relationship, you have to relate to the person that you're sitting across from, the person that you're with. So if you're seeing someone and that person's just open it all up, tell me your story type situation, well, then you give them that. But I think a lot of times you have to kind of know who you're dealing with, and you have to be willing to answer questions, and you have to have good answers to questions that actually, answers that actually have meat on the bones. I think a lot of times we get in these situations and we're trying to protect ourselves. We don't want to be hurt. We don't want to put everything about ourselves out there again. But you don't realize that you're sort of shortchanging yourself on getting to know someone on a deeper level and building something. And, it really is the way to build a relationship. You can't have a relationship and have it be all surface. It's just not going to work.
It's definitely not going to work. Here's the other question then, LaDon. What's the timeline? Because here's a famous thing I've heard from women and from men. I don't have time for this.
You will not.
So so when I hear sisters, I just now I'm gonna be I can be King Petty. So I'd be like, so what's your timeline then? How if you meet somebody and they're not responding the way you want them to respond, you just get into the space. I don't have time for this, and it'd be like, but you just met them yesterday.
I think that comes with relationship experience. And I don't discount that, because if, let's just say you're in your 40s and you've been dating for 20 years off and on, when somebody is just not giving you what you need. So I don't necessarily need to see you for 6 months to get that message. I might be able to get that message in about a month. So I'm not going to discount the fact that people do waste your time. And
LaDon, I'm sorry, sis. Hey, LaDon, I love and so appreciate you. A month. Man, they can't even get past the first week. I'm not lying.
But
seriously, I got people, I got family members, homeboy, can't get past the first week.
But you know what that is? Those are those triggers. Okay, so I've had someone do this in the past, and it was a nightmare. I still have trauma from it. You're doing it within the first couple of days. So I know that this isn't a situation that I want to be part of. And that situation has legs. It has some validity to it. Yes, you should protect yourself. But I would say everyone should get at least 2 dates. First date could be really bad. First level of communication could be really bad. Second go around, a person, give them a chance to work on it, to kind of figure you out and get it better. But we shouldn't be shutting people down in a week. However, I do know people do it because they don't want their time wasted. Now, when we talk about not wanting your time wasted, it goes back to one of the points you mentioned from the article. Women are looking at that finite clock and they're going, look, I don't have 6 months to waste with you. 6 months to a year, 2 years of wasted time. That's putting me closer to not, having the family situation that I necessarily want. Where men have you guys can go into your 70s and 80s. So I think a lot of times you're going to hear women more so say, don't waste my time, because literally for women, time matters. And I mean, that's something that we have to keep on the table and seriously consider.
Absolutely. That's one of the, and really that is one of the pieces that came up in this study, was the fact that, that, and in the article from the Root, the sister said that, women, the biological clock, it's always ticking. It's always on. And that the other part about that is that because that clock is ticking, there is this rush to make sure that a man is, you get linked up with the man very quickly, make sure he don't ghost you and all of that. And that can scare a man off.
It can.
That can really scare a man off. How do you prevent that from happening?
I think you do have the conversation. I think women are right in being honest and saying, look, I'm looking to get married. I'm not looking to be someone's long-term girlfriend. I don't think there's anything wrong with setting up what it is you expect out of a relationship. But I think in saying it, you also have to allow a person to meet you where you are. So you have to kind of see that this may not happen in a month. It's not going to happen in 6 months. It may not even happen in 2 years. But you have to be clear about what your end goal is in the relationship. And then I always encourage women to actually listen. Because what I find is men will tell you what their intentions are with you. They'll make it very, very clear. But a lot of times, because we hope, wish, dream, and we want it to be a certain thing, we hang on to situations that aren't necessarily for us. So if you're talking, you want to be married, you want something serious, your clock is winding up, and he's still like, well, I'm out here, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Then clearly that's a mismatch, and you have to hear that. But sometimes we as women don't hear that. We're just going, well, maybe next month he'll change his mind, and then it's 6 years later.
Facts. Like that.
And then you're mad, and then nobody can waste your time anymore.
I'm sorry. LaDon. Oh my God. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. When you said that, yes, that is out. Oh my gosh.
It's true, Farajii. You know that you've encountered people who you've probably sat across from the guy and heard what he was saying about the relationship, and then she's having this separate conversation. You're like, well, wait a minute, that's not matching out. But she's not hearing any of it.
Look. When I have my women friends, say, "Can I get a man's advice?" and I just get it to him real quick and be like, "Oh, time for you to leave him." And the sister, he ain't on the same page, and the sister will make up in just that point. Well, maybe give him, and you like, well, like, sis, I'm trying to tell you as a man,
that ain't happening.
He ain't there. He ain't there, sis. He ain't there. And it's like, no, but you know what? I mean, but he did say,
no.
Yo, if you want to do the detective work, fine. But trust and believe, I'm telling you, he ain't there. You're not listening.
Uh-huh.
And to that, and to your point, and I mean, men, we do the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
We do the same. We don't listen to each other at the very beginning. First, I don't, and I'm a huge advocate of asking questions, right? Like, you should not walk away from the conversation feeling like, well, what did he mean? And I guess because of the role that I play on TV as always asking questions, it's a part of me. So I'm always asking, well, what do you mean? Or what did he say? What did she say? Or, and then they're like, I don't know. I just figured it out. Like, in this day and time, you got to ask questions.
You have to ask questions.
You can't leave it to chance. And then you going home, you walking away from the conversation on that moment, and you like, well, I should have. I mean, do you think he? Like, you should have asked him.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You should have asked him. You should have asked him. And I think we just don't ask the questions. We are not listening when somebody says things to us. Oh man, that just hit me. Oh boy. Oh my God. That just hit me. All right, let me get to a couple of folks because people are checking in LaDon. Folks have been talking to LaDon Black, our relationship expert here. King Lee, you checked in and said, look, trust me, some women give me the side eye when I tell them I am single. It can be tough at times being straight in this era. Yeah, King Lee is LaDon. He's all the way in Germany, black man in Germany. So I'm sure his dating situation. I'm sure his dating situation is kind of crazy right now. But yeah. And I think that for King, I don't know how old you are, bro, but I know that for King, for a man that maybe in his 40s or 50s or something like that, dating can be very, very challenging for black men.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Because you're dating women who have, possibly been in long-term relationships and now are looking for something new and different.
Yeah.
So they're no longer looking for the picket fence and the dog and the kids. They've done that. So how do you deal with the woman who's like, well, I just really want you to be a great partner? Or they're looking at women who are slightly younger who view dating and relationships in a whole different way from the way they were raised. So that can be really, really challenging because you're either trying to keep up or trying to adjust. So I totally understand how it could be harder for a man who's single over 40.
He said he's 61. He's 61, no children, never been married, LaDon.
Yeah. And so it is hard. It's hard because you're trying to figure out where you fit in when it comes to dating. And it's a hard thing to figure out because people are out here and they have different motivations, and we see relationships a lot differently than we did traditionally.
Absolutely. DeAndre, you checked in and said facts from Farajii and a guest, how these males are brought up as a major determining factor on how they perceive the world and relationships around them. Do you, when you talk to men, do you advise men to quote unquote read certain books, not do certain things on social media? What do you do to get men to not think like they are Neanderthals and think like they could be legitimate and potential partners?
You know what? I always encourage men to have a female friend who's not a romantic interest. I think that's important. I think you have to. And I think women should have a man in their life as well. That's not a romantic interest. Because I think from those people, you get a really honest take on how you appear in the relationship world. You know, they can tell you about your stuff. They can tell you about how people perceive you or how you're operating or where you may need to adjust. And then also, let's be honest about how we were raised and what we saw growing up. Sometimes, you know, you hit that 30, 40, 50 mark. You have to really be honest about how your parents' relationship or lack thereof really impacted the way you sort of conduct yourself in relationships. And it's time to start fixing yourself. You can't just be out there injuring people. You got to fix yourself if you're going to sort of achieve great love.
And you know what, and I'm glad you bring that up, LaDon, because that's just good karma, right? Like a lot of times, and I hear this from both men and women, when we say, you know, I don't know what's wrong, and it's like, you go from one situation to the next, not truly in recovering, not truly healing from it. You bring all that extra baggage. You think that you know, a lot of times our own thinking can be the Achilles heels for us to be successful in relationships, because we always think it's the other person. And when we're close, when we're alone, we always say, oh, it's the other person. I'm serious. Like, it takes a big and a mature person to be like, you know what? That was me. I effed that up real bad.
Right. I mean, and a lot of times we think the new person is the answer. And really what we're doing is just inflicting the same pain on a different victim. So if you look at, you know, a person's, you know, sort of trajectory of relationships or their relationship history, a lot of times you'll see the same themes. It's just different people. So you have to actively work on those things that have not worked for you in the past. And it's never too late to do that. So even to, you know, your viewer who's in his 60s, you know, it's never, ever too late to kind of look at your relationship history and say, well, how can I do it better next time?
Absolutely. Mike V, you said, if you socialize a generation of men under feminism, then you're bound to have a byproduct of men who are emotionally disconnected. Jenks Morton did a whole documentary called What Black Men Think. I do know Jenks, Mike V, but I'm a little bit confused about your thought pattern when you say, when you socialize a generation of men under feminism, that you're bound to have a byproduct of men who are emotionally disconnected. Because being a feminist means that you have an understanding of the struggle of women. As a man, that you support equality. So I'm not sure if Mike, and you can certainly clarify it, but, you know, this point of the feminist movement and how it's shaping men's view of women, it's interesting because women are putting themselves out saying, no, we can do this, we can do that. We are strong. We are able.
Right.
So men are feeling like they're not needed, or if they're feeling disempowered because of that. Explain that to me. Help me to understand that, LaDon.
You know, there is a way of thinking that feels like because women are so powerful, you have access to money and education, and you can own property, and you can, you know, literally make it happen for yourself, that we are taking masculinity from men. I don't necessarily believe that's true, but I understand that there are a lot of men who feel that way. Like women are just out here operating on their own. So there's really nothing left for a man to do. So when you get these quote unquote soft men, or these men who aren't what you want, you sort of made it. I don't necessarily think it's true, but I do know that there are a lot of people who believe that. Because Farajii, I tend to see it the way you do, that feminism is about women's rights. And if you're a man who's sort of been raised underneath that, you're more so raised with the fact that, you know, women should have opportunity and that there are things that they can do and they should be respected. But you don't feel as a man that that necessarily takes anything away from you.
Yeah, and I think, I think for the pushback on that, and I'm not saying, Mike V, that you feel this way personally, but I'm just saying the pushback is that maybe men should get involved in those conversations about feminist ideas so that way you can have a better understanding of what women go through. And then you figure out, okay, as a man, what can I add to, how can I stand with women in that respect? Because, you know, even the term feminism can give a man, oh, you one of them feminists, versus understanding that a woman is just simply trying to be seen, be heard, be respected, and be seen as an equal and a partner. Which, well, you know, for men,
right?
Either you're going to do it, or you're going to.
That women have the act. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, just for men, it's like in this day and time, if you don't want to be a partner with a woman, then you shouldn't be in a relationship, bro.
Right. It's so true.
Because guess what? You ain't gonna always have the upper hand. And I think, you know, and we don't have enough time to talk about this, but the power dynamics that speaks to, you're not gonna always be in a position of authority. You're gonna have bad days. You could possibly lose your job. She might make more money than you. Emotionally, she might be further mature, a little bit more mature and further advanced. You're not gonna always be the upper hand. You have to be able to say, okay, here's my strengths, here's some things I need to work on, and then y'all figure it out. But that takes communication. That takes a lot of other stuff.
It absolutely does take communication. And I think maybe what this study and what the articles have really pointed out is that women expect more from the men in their lives and that men need to step it up. I mean, you can be mad about it. You can think it's unfair. You can think that it's, you know, requiring way too much from a man than what they're willing to or what they've traditionally had to give. But you just have to give more because she doesn't have to pick you. And that's where we are. It doesn't matter that maybe there's a whole bunch of women in the world and fewer men. A lot of women are just electing to live on their own, to be on their own. So if you want to be picked, you're going to have to step up.
Woo! LaDon. Because guess what, bro? You ain't the only one.
No, not at all. And there is a guy out there who will share his feelings and talk about his past and talk about his feelings and how he sees his future, and she will connect with him. So you have to be willing to do it.
Wow. Hey, LaDon, that has to be one of the realest relationships he's ever heard. You don't want to step up your game? She will move on, bro. She's not going to pick you.
Not going to pick you. No.
Man, LaDon Black, relationship expert. LaDon, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you, sis, for coming on and sharing your insight and expertise. I got to bring you back, but thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Farajii.
Absolutely. All right, folks. What a great way to end the week. I'm telling you. Woo! Man, dynamic show. Fast. Oh, man, just had some great conversations. Look, folks, I want to, it's not enough that there's so much that we need to talk about on that respect about relationships, but we do need to have some very, very important conversations. If you want to check it out, the Psychology Today piece, it was again written by Mr. Greg Mattis, who is a relationship psychologist. He talks about the rise of lonely single men. Men need to address their deficits to meet healthier relationship expectations. A very fascinating read. But it just causes us as men to look at ourselves and figure out how we can move forward to have these healthier relationships. And I think it's a good conversation piece. Some women might think it's controversial, but men, if y'all know like I know, we need to step up our game. Because guess what? She can find somebody else who will. All right. That's going to do it for us on today's show. Fantastic show. Thank you to all of my very special guests. Dr. Nadia Lopez. I want to thank Sister Tiffany Green Abdullah, the author of the book, The Bean Pie, and of course, LaDon Black. And of course, I want to thank each and every one of you, my online culture crew, for continuing to make these conversations so interesting. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Big shout out to my team, Joel, Shannon, Ariel, Keenan. Thank you, and Lise. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And of course, we need your support, folks. I haven't been driving it like I have been driving it on the past couple of shows, but look, the fact remains is that Black Star Network is a institution, Black media institution that needs your support. So make sure y'all support us. Go to blackstarnetwork.com, blackstarnetwork.com, and show your support, share the videos, and make sure that the world knows that Black media is here to stay. That's going to do it for me. Stay tuned. Roland Martin Unfiltered. RMU is coming up next at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk on Monday for another successful and exciting set of conversations right here on The Culture, only found here on the Black Star Network. Have a great weekend, everybody. God willing, we'll see each other on Monday. Peace.